You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible.
The Senate voted not to call witnesses in President Donald Trump's impeachment trial this afternoon, ushering in the final phase of the proceedings with a vote to acquit or convict Trump, possibly coming in as late as Wednesday. The vote was 49 to 51. Here's Representative Val Demings with some of the arguments for witnesses.
Last Tuesday, at the onset of this trial, we moved for Leader McConnell's resolution to be amended to subpoena documents and witnesses from the outset. This body decided to hold the question over. You have now heard opening arguments from both sides. You have seen the evidence that the House was able to collect. You have heard about the documents and witnesses President Trump blocked from the House's impeachment inquiry. We have vigorously questioned both sides. The President's counsel has urged you to decide this case and render your verdict upon the record assembled by the House. The evidence in the record is sufficient. It is sufficient to convict the President on both articles of impeachment, more than sufficient. But that's simply not how trials work. As any prosecutor or defense lawyer would tell you, when a case goes to trial, both sides call witnesses and subpoena documents to bring before the jury. That happens every day in courtrooms all across America. There is no reason why this impeachment trial should be any different. The common sense practice is born out of precedents. There has never before been a full Senate impeachment trial without a single witness. In fact, you can see in the slide, in every one of the 15 prior impeachment trials, the Senate has called multiple witnesses. Today, we ask you to follow this body's uniform precedents and your common sense. We urge you to vote in favor of subpoenaing witnesses and documents. Now, I'd like to address one question at the offset. There has been much back and forth about whether, if the House believes it has sufficient evidence to convict, which we do, why do we need more witnesses and documents? So I'd like to be clear. The evidence presented over the past week and a half strongly supports a vote to convict the President. The evidence is overwhelming. We have a mountain of evidence. It's direct, it's corroborated by multiple sources, and it proves that the President committed grave, impeachable offenses to cheat in the next election. The evidence confirms that if left in office, President Trump will continue to harm America's national security. He will continue to seek to corrupt the upcoming election, and he will undermine our democracy, all to further his own personal gain. But this is a fundamental question that must be addressed. Is this a fair trial? Is this a fair trial? Is this a fair trial? Without the ability to call witnesses and produce documents, the answer is clearly and unequivocally no. It was the President's decision to contest the facts, and that is his right. But because he has chosen to contest the facts, he shall not be heard to complain. He shall not be heard to complain that the House wishes to further prove his guilt, to answer the questions he would raise. He complains that few witnesses spoke directly to the president about his misconduct beyond his damning conversations with Sondland and Mulvaney. Okay, let's hear from others then. The witnesses the House wishes to call directly to the president's own words, his own admissions of guilt, his own confessions of responsibility. If they did not, all the president's men would be on their witness list, not ours. These witnesses and the documents their agencies produce tell the full story. And I believe that we are interested in hearing the full story. You should want to hear it. More than that, the American people, we know they want to hear it.
Joining me now to talk about what's next is Joseph Williams, senior editor of U.S. News and World Report, and on Skype, Rod Richardson, host of the Disruption Now podcast. So, Joseph, we know how the chips have fallen. We've seen the calls for witnesses. I think that the Democrats, the Senate Democrats, gave a very impassioned plea as to why we need those witnesses called, particularly after the earth-shattering John Bolton comments. We've seen the responses after the Lev Parnas interview. At the end of the day, the Republicans have said no witnesses. Where does that leave us?
That leaves us with a president who's basically left unaccountable. I mean, that's the real problem here. I mean, a lot of people have said that the verdict was pre-cooked, that the cake had already been baked, that we all knew what this was going to happen. But the problem here is that it repeats a pattern that Trump has had his entire career, not only as a politician, but also as a businessman. You recall during the campaign, he said some various disparaging things, was never held to account by the Republican Party. He gets into office, does a lot of other really questionable things, not a word from the Republican Party. And now he is actively seeking, he sought, foreign interference in the election, no accountability here. So basically, they've expanded the powers so much that he could probably do whatever he wants, and that is a real problem because Trump is not going to be in office forever, or we don't know if he's going to be in office forever because, quite frankly, they have said whatever. If he wants to stay, they lack the power and the authority to get him out. So that's a real problem.
No, and I agree with you on that. I want to get Rob Richardson in on this as well. Again, we just saw what happened today. A lot of people, specifically those on the left, kind of felt like this was in the motion. But there were some holdouts who actually believed that we were going to have some Republican senators actually look towards having these witnesses come forward. How do you feel about the latest news?
Well, these holdouts, I don't know what they were looking at or who they were talking to. So, look, I mean, I don't know these folks that really had this view that Republicans were going to actually come at this in a fair way. Was it a fair trial? No. Did they care about it? No. Do they have any integrity left in the Republican Party? Absolutely not. You have a series of folks that are just cowards and traitors and don't really care about anything other than trying to preserve power. But they're not looking at the long term. And I want to just reflect on Trump's defense. What they said essentially the other day was, if a president has a political interest, then they can do anything. So,
absolutely. I think that I agree with you there. I think that was one of the most interesting points and a very new defense. This was something that came up. We hadn't heard them use this one before. And it was basically that a quid pro quo.
No one ever has because it's crazy.
A quid pro quo, if it benefits you personally, is absolutely okay. And I think that takes us down a very slippery and scary slope as well.
Well, what they're saying is, if it's in the interest of politically in the country, it's in the best interest and the person feels like it is, then it's okay to do, which is crazy because Trump, you can see the argument being, okay, we're in a war or something, then I need to stay president for another term, or yeah, I lost, but doesn't matter because it's in my best political interest, so let me stay. It is an absolutely crazy argument. It's clearly that either one or two things are happening. Either we're seeing the end of the Republican Party, which I hope that's what's happening, or we're seeing the end of America as a democracy, and we're just going to something else. And that really depends upon what happens next, because clearly we can't depend on the Senate to actually stand up.
Well, I would vote for end of the Republican Party a little bit more than the end of the Republic. Although it's really easy to see from here if you squint, right? The end of democracy. The point is that we've been here before, right? FDR in the late 30s was trying to pack the courts, and the Republican Party rose up and said, hey, not fair. And even some Democrats kind of grumbled, you're edging a little towards dictatorship.
But I would argue that we've reached beyond that point in the sense that we have a Republican Party that, regardless of what this president has done, is not willing to push back at all.
That's exactly right. I mean, the point is that in FDR's case, the institutions held him back. The House, the Senate, the judiciary all said, you can't really do that. Now we have the House pushing in one direction, the Senate, which is the final arbiter here, saying, no, we think he can do that.
Yeah.
And we know that the courts have pretty much been packed in his favor because all along in each step of the way, that's what it's been all about. And the reason why Mitch McConnell has decided to engineer a rapid acquittal is so he can get back to the assembly line of producing these judges that get lifetime appointments on the federal court and that do not have any accountability whatsoever and can execute their voter ID laws, that can execute their various and sundry schemes to try to constrict federal power in the hands of just one party.
And Rob, we already see that, this president is fast-tracking to his own vindication. How do you think this affects the 2020 election?
Well, I'm going to get to that, but I'll actually want to make, as I'm a history junkie, I want to reference the FDR mention that was made there. I think it's a little bit different. We have to make sure we keep that in mind because during FDR's time, there was an alliance between Republicans, conservative Republicans, and conservative Dixiecrats who both did not like FDR. We have nothing of the sort right now. We have a Republican Party that is completely lockstep in doing whatever this president says. So I think we're at a much more dangerous ground. Also, we had a Democratic president that was willing to push the edges, and because he did that, he actually got more things accomplished that people were nervous about what he might do. And he also had 4 terms. So we look, if we're talking about some comparisons, we want to be very careful about that. So what this is going to do with 2020 is really hard to say. I used to have a pretty good indication about where the country was going. Ever since the present occupant of the White House has been in there, he's really kind of fogged things. So it really depends on a few things. 1, if there's massive voter turnout. 2, if there's a reaction to people that feel like, okay, we don't have any accountability in the Senate. We don't have any accountability with the president. We need to bring things back to normal. If that's the narrative and if that's enough, which I'm not sure if it is, that can move Trump out of office. But you also have a strong economy. There's just a whole bunch of unknowns. With Trump, nothing can follow conventional wisdom. We're going to see him actually, I think, cheat and do things we haven't seen before. So I'm not sure if Democrats are prepared for that fight. I think they go along of saying, oh, well, let's just do everything right. Let's just make sure the American people know how logical we are and they're going to follow us. And I think that's a failed strategy. So I don't know.
But see, here's the thing. I mean, if you were talking about the 2020 election and whether or not this is going to impact, clearly it will. I mean, not the least of which because I think Rob's made a point that this party is not necessarily equipped to fight asymmetrical warfare against this guy. Number 2, is it really going to be a fair election? I mean, we don't know. He already has solicited foreign interference in his previous win. He probably is going to do it again. He's already talked about China even before the impeachment trial got started. He put a shout out to China. If y'all want to hack us, we need some information on the Democrats, so have at it. And basically, he's admitted to everything, which is one of the things that really drives me up the wall about this, is because we have a party that's dedicated to power and will not acknowledge the rule of law.
Absolutely, but if you're somebody who the game is rigged for you, you're someone who knows that your party is not going to stand against you, regardless of the damage that it will do to democracy. At the end of the day, it has basically given him a blank check to do whatever he wants. And I think that, moving into this next phase, because everybody knows what's going to happen with impeachment here on out, this may in fact embolden him a lot more. His base, it's going to make it harder for Democrats. We're watching this unfold before our eyes, and I don't necessarily think that there is enough or that we've heard enough that can sway some of those voters.
Well, maybe and maybe not. I mean, I think that the Republican voters are locked in. There's no doubt about that. The middle, there's probably some maneuverability there. But the 2 things you got to remember is, number 1, he will cheat. You're absolutely right. This probably is going to happen. He's already put a call out. Number 2, the Electoral College is not necessarily in Democrats' favor because that's how the game got won last time. Not because he won more votes. He didn't. but because he had the numbers vis-a-vis the system that allowed him to claim a win, even though it was far from a mandate.
Yeah, I actually think to add to that point, I don't think there's a lot of undecided voters. I think the undecided voters are very, 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 very small. People know who this president is. They know where he stands. And I don't think there's a lot of people that can be moved. So the question is, the persuadable voters are those who can get their voters out. And if Democrats can make a case to make sure enough voters participate, and they can make sure that there's not enough cheating, they'll win. Trump is going to motivate his people. They're going to be motivated. He hasn't lost any votes. I don't think he's gained any. But his people are going to come out, and Democrats better be prepared for that.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Join Dr. Jackie Hood Martin as she engages others to think like a leader. Are you looking to enhance your leadership or that of your team in 2020? Join our newest online course and mastermind group, How Successful People Think. She will be your guide as you learn timeless leadership principles to apply to daily living. Offer expires February 28th, 2020. Register for or start the online course today at livetolead.com/Leadsburg.
Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video. You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it.